Tonight, the row over a major milk contract. The state government defends favouring a foreign-owned company over Maleny Dairies. What a difference a few days can make. Creeks flow for the first time in years, and koalas rescued, not from fires, but from heavy rain. Calls for a Senate inquiry over a pre-election sports grants cash splash. And world number one Ash Barty returns to form, leading into the semi-final of the Adelaide International. Good evening, Jessica Van Vonderen with ABC News. Sunshine Coast dairy farmers have accused the Queensland government of hypocrisy over a decision to award a lucrative hospital supply contract to a foreign-owned company. Maleny Dairies says it was encouraged to tender for the 2-year deal by the state government as part of its Buy Local campaign.
Maleny Dairies is considered a great Queensland success story. But the family-owned business has been snubbed to supply milk to some of the state's major hospitals.
We could fill this contract. Like they're saying, oh, you know, that we wouldn't be able to supply and all that, and that's a load of crap.
The 2-year deal to supply dairy to Metro North Hospital and Health Service has instead been awarded to French-owned company Lactalis. Specific products will also be supplied by Chinese-owned Lion Dairy. The state government says Lactalis was the only tenderer able to meet the full requirements.
They will be sourcing their milk from 141 Queensland dairy farmers. They'll also be supporting over the 500 local Queensland jobs that are employed by Paul's.
Maleny Dairies owner Ross Hopper says he was encouraged to tender for the contract through the Queensland government's Buy Local campaign.
We want local companies who employ locals to share in the opportunity.
It was a load of hogwash, and why would they? I just am gutted and felt like a fool to have believed them.
He's now seeking an urgent meeting with the Premier.
Anastasia Palaszczuk and the Labor government have let down the locals in this case. It's made a laughingstock of the Buy Local program.
Ross Hopper says the Metro North contract would have equated to around 5% of Maleny Dairies' overall business, and he rejects any suggestion the company wouldn't have fulfilled the contract. Milk suppliers aren't happy either, saying it's another setback for the local industry.
It's just disappointing that the state government's taken decision and sort of screwed another industry as much as they can, you know.
But the state government stands by its decision. Amy Sheehan, ABC News, Maleny.
It's been another day of rainfall across parts of the state, with some impressive totals recorded around the Central Highlands and Darling Downs. Tonight, the Cunningham Highway at Cunningham's Gap is closed due to flooding. The Bureau says while it's been welcome rain, it hasn't broken the drought.
Creeks that haven't flowed like this since Cyclone Debbie. As an upper trough moves through drought-ravaged Queensland toward the coast, much-needed rain fell in parts of the southeast. Yesterday's storms brought patchy but heavy rainfall in central and southern Queensland. Today, the serenity in Chinchilla never felt so good. 150 millimetres was recorded near this property. Locals said it filled dams in hours. Near Dalby, Kim Bremner's fields are sodden.
It's really been a godsend at this time of the year. We've had no rain virtually since March last year.
But he says it hasn't been felt evenly.
There have been some people that haven't had a lot of rain, but even 20 mils will put some rain in the rainwater tanks and people might be able to stop carting water for a little while.
In the state's west, Quilpie locals were jumping for joy. So too, man's best friend. To the east in Morven, streams turned into torrents. But the Central Highlands were among the luckiest. Dry fields turned to mud in Rolleston, and the rain was too irresistible in nearby Theodore. The slow-moving trough will continue to inch its way along central and southeastern Queensland, and Sunday will likely mark an end to the rain activity. The Bureau says while the rain's been a step in the right direction, it's been too dry in the last few months for it to have made a difference.
So we haven't seen a significant impact on rivers. We've seen some local fluctuations in creeks, but unfortunately this isn't the widespread rainfall we really need in the region.
But the 48 hours of rainfall has brought some joy. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Brisbane.
And large areas of New South Wales, also ravaged by drought and bushfires, have received significant rainfall. Parched wildlife lapped up the first rain in months. The heavy downpours did bring flash flooding to some areas, and there were reports of creeks that hadn't flowed for years filling with water. Some of the heaviest falls in New South Wales were in the Hunter region. Bulahdelah got 112 millimetres overnight, its heaviest rain in more than 2 years. Farmers are elated.
Hey, bring it on! All right!
A young Queensland woman has made an appeal for information about the suspected cold case murder of her mother. 32-year-old Tina Greer was last seen by family leaving a home in Beachmont in January 2012. Her abandoned car was found on a dirt road at a lookout in the scenic rim a few days later. Her daughter joined police today to announce a $250,000 reward in the hope it will lead to a breakthrough.
I beg you to please come forward. I just want to find my mum and where she is. I just need closure.
We want to see the right people brought to justice.
Indemnity for anyone not responsible for her death is also on offer. Deputy Nationals leader Bridget McKenzie is staring down the prospect of a parliamentary inquiry into her involvement in a grants program which handed $100 million to sporting clubs around the country. An investigation has found it appeared to favour marginal coalition seats ahead of the election, as well as electorates the government wanted to win. Here's political reporter Matthew Doran.
Out of Canberra, but still in the spotlight.
How do you justify your choices here?
The Deputy Nationals leader can't escape questions about her handling of the contentious community sports grants program.
All local members, Labor, Liberal, National Party, Independent, appreciated the investment into their local clubs.
She made political decisions.
Bridget, how are you going?
An Auditor General's report has raised serious questions about the integrity of the grants process, finding the then Sports Minister ignored advice from Sport Australia and gave millions of dollars to clubs not originally earmarked for cash.
Every single project that received funding was eligible to receive it.
Analysis of the grants show the most marginal seats which received the most funding included Boothby in South Australia, Corangamite and Indi in Victoria, Eden Monaro in New South Wales and Dawson in North Queensland. One of the successful clubs there is North Queensland Football, which received more than $360,000 to improve its Townsville facilities.
We don't get involved with any side of politics. We're here to grow the game.
The prestigious Mossman Rowing Club on Sydney's North Shore was given $500,000 in April. It didn't help the local member get over the line at the May election, and his successes assessment?
We just seem to have this focus on personal gain and the moral compass just seems to be lost.
The government argues Labor electorates also benefited greatly.
If a minister wants to cover themselves and take out some insurance, they'll give a couple of grants in electorates from the other side.
You can't tell me one tennis club is more meritorious than another.
But therein lies the problem, with the minister and her office using their own criteria to award some of these grants. The allegation is they have deemed some clubs more deserving. And when politicians return to the capital next month, you can expect to see the Senate attempt to launch its own inquiry into this saga.
Australian people are sick and tired of pork barrelling by politicians and looking after their own nest egg.
And they'll be hoping she cracks under parliamentary pressure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Matthew Doran, ABC News, Canberra.
One Nation's Pauline Hanson says she'll be campaigning against the Queensland Government's 2032 Olympics bid, calling it irresponsible and selfish. The senator has launched a negative advertising blitz and has written to the Prime Minister urging him to abandon the plan. She says the money could be better spent.
I don't believe that we can afford it, and I think water infrastructure is more important to Queensland.
The South East Queensland Council of Mayors says the comments are politically self-serving. The widow of a volunteer firefighter killed in a fire tornado has been presented with a bravery award on his behalf. Hundreds of mourners gathered in Holbrook near the New South Wales-Victoria border to honour 28-year-old Samuel McPaul. He died when his fire truck flipped over in fierce winds at the massive Green Valley blaze near Albury last month. Today, his pregnant wife was presented with his bravery award.
There are fine people in this world, but none finer than someone like Sam, who gives of themselves and pays the ultimate price in the pursuit of making a difference in their local community.
He's one of 6 firefighters killed in the New South Wales and Victorian fires. The father and son killed while fighting the Kangaroo Island bushfires have been farewelled in an emotional service in Adelaide. 2 planes flew overhead as hundreds of mourners gathered to pay tribute to 78-year-old Outback pilot Dick Lang and his 43-year-old son Clayton Lang. Dick Lang was remembered as a pioneer of outback tourism who was larger than life.
I'll be forever grateful for him instilling in me a sense of adventure and an appreciation of the wonders of nature. He led an extraordinary life, and even his death was extraordinary. I still can't quite believe it.
Clayton Lang was remembered as a respected hand surgeon, instrumental to the treatment of advanced melanoma and skin cancer. He's survived by 2 young daughters. Still to come on ABC News, a loyal Jack Russell stays all night by a lost 3-year-old girl who went missing on a flooded WA property. And the festival show that's breaking down barriers and smashing stereotypes. For just the 3rd time in history, an impeachment trial of an American president has begun in the United States Senate. This morning, Donald Trump was formally summoned to answer 2 charges, and a key figure in the scandal went public with more damaging claims. North America correspondent James Glenday reports.
This was a moment that'll live forever in America's history books. The head of the country's highest court was sworn in.
So help you God. I do.
So too the senators who will effectively serve as the jury.
Do you solemnly swear?
And the Democratic politicians prosecuting the case against Donald Trump formally put the 45th president on trial.
You could feel the weight of the moment. I saw members on both sides of the aisle visibly gulp.
The Commander-in-Chief has now been summoned to answer 2 charges. The first states he abused the powers of the presidency by pressuring Ukraine to announce investigations that could have helped him politically ahead of this year's election. The second alleges he then tried to cover it all up.
This thing is a big hoax. It's a big hoax. We call it, this is the current hoax.
But former members of the president's orbit keep contradicting his blanket denials. Lev Parnas, a Soviet-born businessman who's facing criminal charges, says he worked with Mr. Trump's personal lawyer to pressure Ukrainian officials.
President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all of my movements.
And this morning, a federal watchdog accused the president's team of breaking the law by withholding military aid from Kiev as leverage. Embarrassing as those developments may be for the White House, they're almost certainly not going to change the outcome of this historic trial. Mr. Trump's Republican colleagues control the numbers in the Senate, and senior administration officials here again today declared they're hopeful the president will be acquitted quickly, perhaps within 2 to 3 weeks. James Glenday, ABC News, Washington.
5 countries whose citizens were killed when Iranian forces shot down a passenger plane have called for Tehran to pay compensation. While Iran has admitted one of its missiles was responsible for the disaster, it's under pressure to do more for the investigation and help identify and repatriate the victims. Middle East correspondent Adam Harvey reports from Beirut.
The foreign ministers from 5 nations mourn their citizens killed when a Ukrainian plane was shot down. The ministers from Canada, Britain, Ukraine, Sweden and Afghanistan want Iran to make amends. Iran's belated admission of guilt is not enough for the families and friends of the 176 people on board.
When you accept full responsibility, there's consequences coming from that, and that's what we're going to be pursuing.
The foreign ministers are demanding that their experts and diplomats take part in the investigation. And they say Iran should compensate the victims' families.
Compensation flows directly from the full admission of responsibility by the Iranian government.
While hoping to stitch together cooperation on the plane investigation, European governments are also watching the Iran nuclear deal unravel. Since the US killed its top general, Iran has vowed to ramp up activities meant to be curtailed by the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, including uranium enrichment.
Today, as I stand here in front of you, we have no limits on nuclear energy, absolutely none.
The European signatories to the nuclear deal say Iran is out of line, and they've begun a process that could result in new sanctions being slapped on Tehran.
Now the Europeans have decided, in order to hide their inability to perform, to take those measures. I don't think they have any standing in JCPOA to do that.
The US and its allies hope that increasing the pressure on Iran will somehow make it less dangerous. But so far, that's not happening. The Middle East is less safe than ever, and the downing of Flight 752 is an example of what can go wrong in a more volatile region. Adam Harvey, ABC News, Beirut.
Prince Harry has attended his first public engagement since announcing he'll be stepping back from senior royal duties. The Duke of Sussex hosted the draw for next year's Rugby League World Cup and met children in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. Details of his new role are still unclear, but the Queen has said she wants a final decision within days. The Duke will reportedly stay in the UK for meetings next week before he rejoins wife Meghan and son Archie in Canada. A record number of tourists came to Brisbane last year, with nearly 1.5 million from overseas. Brisbane's Deputy Mayor Krista Adams says the increase is due in part to direct flights.
Making sure that we're getting those direct flights from China into Brisbane. With the second runway coming on in June, that's going to be even better. But the direct flight from Vancouver in Canada has made a huge difference to those international numbers.
International tourist numbers fell slightly for Queensland. Well, now to the story of a little girl who went missing for 24 hours in the remote north of Western Australia. Her family is celebrating her safe return and their hero puppy, which stayed with her until help arrived. 3-year-old Matilda was found after a massive land and air search. There were serious fears because heavy rain had flooded the area. The child and her Jack Russell Wolfie had wandered from the homestead on the pastoral station. A day later, a helicopter pilot found Matilda unhurt. The dog is believed to have stayed by her side all night. On social media, Matilda's family have praised the dog, describing him as the goodest boy. Well, to finance now, confirmation that China's economy has been weakened by the trade war failed to dampen enthusiasm for Australian shares. Here's Philip Lasker.
It's not only the bushfires that have attracted world attention, our all-conquering stock market is turning heads as well. Only 2 negative days this month so far. That's the best streak in more than 2 years. Not even confirmation that China had recorded its weakest economic growth in 29 years could derail the Australian market. This was the expected confirmation that the trade war had made its mark. China's GDP result weighed on other markets in the region, but Australia took its lead from Wall Street. Tech sector shares rallied in the US, with Alphabet, owners of Google, the newest trillion-dollar juggernaut, joining Apple and Microsoft as the biggest companies on Wall Street. IT stocks like Appen are also behind the Aussie market's record run, but so are telcos and healthcare stocks, not the traditional banking and mining giants that usually define the market. There were more climate casualties today. Agricultural supplies company New Farm was smashed after warning its profits could be halved by drought and offshore competition. Rio Tinto reported a 3% drop in iron ore shipments last year. Here are some recent indicators of the bushfire fallout. In Sydney, from mid-December to mid-January, the number of rooms available increased, but demand and revenue fell. It was much worse outside Sydney, though. Within 2 hours' drive of the city centre, revenue dived more than 10%, which is a big hit. There's about $2 million in lost revenue in Sydney and surrounds so far. Not much happening on the currency front. The Australian dollar continues to hover around 69 US cents, and that's finance.
In tennis, world number one Ash Barty is tonight playing for a place in the final of the Adelaide International. The Queenslander progressed to the semi-finals with a convincing straight sets victory. Today, Ukraine teenager Diana Yastremska booked her place in the decider.
After a scratchy start to the summer, Ash Barty returned to form in her quarter-final in Adelaide.
That's nasty.
Up against the opponent she overwhelmed in last year's French Open final, Marketa Vondrusova, Barty showed off her range of strokes. The Australian eased to a 6-3, 6-3 win.
And that'll do it.
It's getting better and better. I think there are still times in the match where I want it to be a little bit tighter and a little bit more clinical, but all in all, it's really nice to be back here.
Barty has rebounded well after suffering a shock first-up loss at the Brisbane International. Veteran Sam Stosur says playing a home summer as the great Australian hope is challenging.
There's that extra spotlight expectation and everything else that comes along with it, but I think ultimately you've got to be more concerned and more focused on what you want to try and achieve and really narrow it down to, point by point.
But she thinks the 23-year-old is well positioned to handle it.
Ash has handled her whole, ride to this position very well, and I don't see why that's going to stop now.
Barty will play American Danielle Collins tonight. The winner will take on world number 24 Diana Yastremska in the final. The Ukrainian mixed brutal power with some nice touches to beat 6th seed Arina Sabalenka in straight sets.
Oh, it's so good. What a get and a wonderful finish.
In the men's draw, South African qualifier Lloyd Harris won through to the final, beating American Tommy Paul in 3 sets. He'll play the winner of tonight's semi-final between Felix Auger-Aliassime and Andrei Rublev. Peter Lusted, ABC News.
In rugby league, Broncos recruit Jesse Arthurs says he's keen to develop his game under the guidance of coach Anthony Seibold. The 21-year-old speedster was poached from the Titans on a 2-year deal. Arthurs says he first met Seibold during a stint with the Rabbitohs in 2018.
I've had experience with Seibs before when I was down at South, and I had a year under him and I really enjoyed my time there. I thought I learnt a lot, and I thought I progressed as a footy player, so it's good to be back.
The Broncos begin trials next month. The Adelaide Strikers have emphatically returned to the winners' circle, smashing Brisbane at Adelaide Oval. In a complete role reversal from their loss to the Heat on Tuesday, Adelaide's bowlers dismantled the Heat's top order to set up their first 10-wicket win in BBL history.
The Strikers were looking to bounce back, and veteran Peter Siddle got the home side off to a perfect start. That brought superstar AB de Villiers to the crease. But after guiding his side to victory on Tuesday, he couldn't repeat the feat, out for just 2. When the dangerous Chris Lynn was undone by a piece of Rashid Khan magic, the home side were well on top.
Beautifully taken. Wow. Rashid Khan.
Liam O'Connor dismantled the Heat's middle order to pick up career best figures of 3 for 29.
Liam O'Connor's got 2 in 2.
Matthew Renshaw hit a quick-fire 43, but he lacked partners as the visitors slumped to just 100 off 17 overs.
Oh, that's it. That's done.
Adelaide's run chase nearly got off to a disastrous start, but the visitors couldn't capitalise.
Oh, here we go. Oh, confusion and miss.
From there, opener Philip Salt took the opportunity to relax his shoulders and keep the crowd busy.
Oh, that's heaved deep and long into the grandstand. Cathedral end. Oh, that's gone a long, long way into the grandstand as well.
His unbroken partnership with Jake Weatherald accounted for the Heat's total inside just 11 overs. Salt's unbeaten 67 included 10 boundaries as the Strikers secured the win in style.
There it is. Killer blow.
His second half-century of the tournament came from only 34 deliveries. Patrick Martin, ABC News, Adelaide.
In basketball, Illawarra Hawks star recruit LaMelo Ball has cut short his season in the NBL. The 18-year-old suffered an injury in early December and he hasn't played since. Ball is expected to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft later this year.
His impact on his teammates, the way that he's assisted and shared the ball, being able to show great pace, which is great for his stocks in the NBA.
The Hawks have 6 games left and are last on the ladder. They face the Bullets in Brisbane tomorrow. Meantime, CJ Bruton has been named as an assistant coach for the Boomers. Nearly 4 million Australians have a disability, yet it's rarely reflected on stage or screen. A group of artists is looking to change that with a groundbreaking theatre work that's accessible to all audiences.
Theatre soaring to dizzying heights. For audiences of all ages and abilities to enjoy. Paralympian Paul Nanari takes centre stage in this groundbreaking contemporary art piece with his impressive aerial acrobatics.
A lot of people don't know what to expect when I start climbing, so when I put my hand in a loop or my neck in a loop, like I really think it changes, I guess, people's perception of what I can do, and more importantly, what people with disability more broadly can do.
She conjured the clouds as playing at the Campbelltown Arts Centre as part of the Sydney Festival. It takes audiences on a journey of the senses, incorporating the taste of fairy floss, vibrations of the music and sign language to make for a more inclusive experience.
I love the idea of gesture and dance and the idea of communicating without language. You can actually communicate via the body in a very subtle way, and Auslan is a way of doing that.
Wiggles star Emma Watkins plays a young girl who meets magical creatures as she travels through a fairy tale world. She uses sign language throughout the piece.
It's been wonderful to be involved in this production because every single person in the cast and crew has a different background and different abilities and different experiences too. So we have people that have performed for many years, on the stage.
She shares the stage with Hong Kong-born Elvin Lam, one of the few professional dancers in Australia who is deaf.
And I want the audience to not think of me as just deaf. I want them to look and think of me as a performer in general. Because Emma's with me as well. She can sign, and she signs throughout the performance, and she doesn't speak. So I feel like us together is quite a performance in itself.
Making accessibility part of their aesthetic. Lydia Feng, ABC News, Sydney.
Weather now with Ashley Stevenson.
Jess, as we've heard, there has been some fantastic rain thanks to yesterday's storms. Widespread totals of 50 to 100 millimetres were recorded through central and southern parts. 178 millimetres was the highest total at Palin Creek near the border. This morning there was more storm activity in central Queensland. 77 millimetres fell in just 1 hour west of Emerald. Tonight there are still warnings current as storms remain active. The southeast quarter has had some heavy falls and there's more to come. Firstly though, temperatures heating up in the tropics. Cairns topped 36 degrees today. Burketown had its hottest January day since 1985 at 44 degrees. Much cooler under the cloud cover though, a top of just 26 in Roma. A cloudy day for Brisbane. We'll likely see showers later this evening. The city hit a top of 30, as did Ipswich. Zooming out, that deep trough that has brought rain to Queensland is also dumping heavy falls in New South Wales. Another trough is bringing showers and storms to the Northern Territory and WA. On the chart, a high-pressure system is keeping much of Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia clear. You can see heat starting to really build in the Gulf, so hot temperatures there over the next few days. To the major centres, a rainy day for Sydney and 22, smoke haze for Melbourne at 29, partly cloudy in Hobart with a top of just 18, mostly fine in Perth and 30. Returning to Queensland, a series of troughs will lead to further showers and thunderstorms, particularly for the central and southern coast and adjacent inland. As the system inches towards the coast, the majority of wet weather will focus on the southeast before mostly clearing on Monday. As always with these systems, the rain is patchy and sadly it looks like Western Queensland is largely going to miss out this time. Turning to forecasts, and in the north, showers and storms are possible about the coast. Hot in Townsville at 38 and soaring to 44 in Mount Isa. Mostly sunny in western parts, possible dust for Birdsville at 41. Storms more likely as we move east, 29 the top in Gladstone. A very high chance of showers for the southeast tomorrow, and storms are possible too. 27 in Warwick, 26 for the Gold Coast. In Brisbane, up to 80 millimetres is forecast to fall in the CBD, and we're staying cool at 26. On Moreton Bay, winds east to northeasterly, increasing to 20 knots, seas below 1 metre, sunrise at 8 minutes past 5. And looking ahead, rain for the next few days, although it becomes lighter after tomorrow, a top of 31 in Brisbane on Monday and 33 in Ipswich. Jess?
Thanks, Ash. And that is ABC News for now. Thank you for watching. I'll be back tomorrow night. Until then, enjoy your evening. Have a great night.